Let me hand this over to our moderator, Hanis Lam, who happens to be a tech advocate with experience in building brands and connecting business to people across multi-social network. And we have her also as our association's head of communications and marketing. Hanis, you unfortunately do not have too much time left.
Understand. I'll do this very quickly, and I hope the panelists will bear with me. So I'm going to rush you if we run behind time a little bit. So thank you again for having me on board, and this has been a very productive afternoon. Definitely learned a lot from all of you. So I'm going to go straight to it. We are now in an age where the workplace isn't just a physical space occupied by employees during office hours. Today's workplace is an always connected environment providing instant access to everything employees need. So the lines between physical office and the place where the work actually happens are becoming blurred, as in the distinction between personal and professional lives. I think this basically sums up all the presentations that were shared today. And so digital transformation is inevitable. I'm going to post this to Mr. Hon, Dr. Ben, and Dr. Sim, so you can take your time to answer this in your own one by one. So Mr. Hon first, then Dr. Ben, then Dr. Sim. So what has your personal experience with the digital transformation in the cybersecurity, robotics, and AI industry been like? And how do you think we can close these gaps that you have mentioned earlier?
Okay, as far as cybersecurity is concerned, AI, all this has not been taken in a holistic manner. What I'm trying to say is that I've seen the individual technology vendor, let's say firewalls, they have their firewall AI. Antivirus have the antivirus AI. But that is not what we want to see. What we want to see, because we are facing challenge of hiring people to manage all these things. What we want to see is a platform with AI that integrating all these different aspects from your firewall, from your endpoint, from your applications to do a detection and handle. Because we need this urgently, because there's simply too much data to analyze, and we need AI to help us to make sense of it, to learn and to pick up all this, because it's simply too fast. We cannot humanly possible. So moving forward, we strongly encourage the human development, the knowledge development shall also include cybersecurity for AI. We have seen AI for retail, for manufacturing, but we haven't really seen cybersecurity AI. So I'm as a entrepreneur, I have difficulty to hire a cybersecurity guy who also happen to know AI. So that is what I'm feeling, and I like to actually encourage more people to take up this challenge and take up this as a career.
Thank you, Mr. Hon. Can we also have Dr. Ben's opinion on Dr. Sim as well after this? Or are they not on board? Have they gone missing? Dr. Sim, I see him here.
Yeah, I think
Hi.
Ben just, I muted Ben just now. He got muted.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't speak.
Okay, Dr. Ben, you may begin first.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, robotics automation is inevitable. That's for sure. I think we just have to learn to coexist. I mean, the experience that we have is, like our new product, it's a confirmed, way to go in full automation, because depending on what I call it, workforce, like what Hon mentioned, it's going to be a real pain to get the right people for the right tasks, and whether can you get enough of them, so yeah. So even our daily lives, simple thing like the cars that we drive, it's being automated day by day, and very soon we don't even need drivers already. That's including us. So it's really unavoidable. We have to embrace it, and just and make the best of the coexistence. Yep.
Okay, the thing is now cars are going to be driverless as well. So
Yeah.
then the Grab drivers now need to brace themselves and upskill again, right? Because
Yes.
I don't know, maybe it's not going to be so soon, maybe 5 to 10 years with all the regulations to be placed first.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. And
Yep.
Dr. Sim, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Hanis. Yeah. So actually, I just want to share my experience in my line of education. The younger generation, actually, they are more prepared and willing to go on to all these digital technologies, while compared to my generation or maybe the older generations. A lot of times I see some of my colleagues, right, in these universities, they're actually doing their teachings using the blackboards. They don't even know how to use video conferencing tools. They don't know how to get the students to submit their homeworks using learning management systems. So I think in that aspect, I think we need to spend more time actually, not just to focus on preparing the next generation. We actually need to also focus in upskilling our generations who are actually in the workforce, right? Serving in the companies, right? I think we need to spend times in preparing them actually for the digital world. Okay, so this is my experience. Okay, and as for the younger generations, as I mentioned earlier, they're already well prepared to go into the digital world. But I would like to focus on the soft skill side, because we often heard from the companies, right? Students that have graduated from universities, they are not very good in English. They are not very good in communications. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to conduct presentations. So these are the things that we focus in university as well. So in all our courses, in our programs, we include these elements in our program as well. So we get the students to do presentations. We get the students to take part in some of the design thinking courses. Right. Also, we get them to actually embark on entrepreneurship program as well. So I think those are things we need to see beyond the digital technology. So these are the soft skill side is also very important for the preparing for the next generation. Okay, so that's my view and my shares. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. And mentioning soft skills, I think even selling skills is super important, because you have all these technologies and no one to sell it for you is no point as well. To sell the idea to the people that it is needed and it's relevant right now. So my next question will be for Mr. Thomas and Mr. Su Ming. Culture is the shared set of beliefs, values, and mindsets that guide a group's behaviors. It gives an enterprise a long-term competitive advantage because it's very difficult to copy. Some of the factors that set a digital company's culture apart include a strong sense of purpose and a diverse, high-quotient digital workforce. So what are the golden rules that leadership should focus on to move toward a digital culture?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. You're hitting probably the key and most difficult question that everybody is having when they're moving also to an agile transformation, how to establish an agile culture or a digital mindset, however you want to call that. And as we know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. But breakfast is over now and we're moving to lunch. So the question is whether we want to continue allow something that is so sometimes often so hardly defined as the culture is how things are happening around here. Just go undefined and allow us to interfere with all the things that we feel we need to do. So I think one of the key issues when doing an agile transformation is that we need to take control of our culture. And rather allowing it to happen and to evolve, that we are actively, proactively shaping it. And that starts, and a culture is lived by the people, and it starts from the head. So if you will not be able of getting a top-down agreement and alignment between the executives of the company that are in charge of establishing a new culture or a new mindset, you will start to fail. So we really need to go top-down on that one and put the doing and put the culture into the doing and the actings and the day-to-day interactions of the executives. And that takes leadership trainings, that takes coachings, that will take you making hard decisions of who is going to stay in the company and who don't. but you really need to start thinking this topic from the top.
Thank you so much. And Ming, would you
Hi.
like to share your thoughts? Yeah.
Thomas, we're going into dinner now, so.
Exactly. Yeah.
I agree with Thomas that there has to be top down. I'll just tell you a very short anecdotal story. Many years ago, I used to work in a large consumer company, and I was an accountant, still is in some ways, and we had this process of capital expenditure. In those days, we had this email manager called Lotus Notes, which doesn't exist today, and the capital expenditure process covers an entire region. So this was Asia Pacific and the world. And the authorization levels were quite complex. So in some cases, people in the regional office had to sign off. And it was a very manual process because documents had to be raised, attachments put to the documents, and then sent to the various people to authorize. In the regional office, people travel all the time. So by the time they get back to the office, the proposal is probably sitting, 10 feet down in their inbox, and there's a tendency to miss documents. So I came up with this idea of using Lotus Notes as a means of electronically managing the entire capital expenditure process. Now, this was a real challenge because every single person I met, especially the IT people, said no, it cannot be done. But I was very fortunate. I was fortunate because I had a boss who believed in me, and he was willing to give me, in those days, 10,000 ringgit, which is not much today, to do a proof of concept. And even with the 10,000 ringgit, I had to fight to find somebody who was willing to work with me to come up with a simple prototype that would work. And eventually I did find somebody. It wasn't ideal, but it did prove that the concept worked. You would not believe the number of people who jumped on the bandwagon immediately after they saw the prototype. The project was hijacked by somebody in the UK because he was a global IT person, and they did well. I got a bragging rights. I had the bragging rights to that solution, but apart from that, it was taken away from me. But it was quite heartening that recently I met my former CEO, and she said, the one thing I remember you for is that capital expenditure system that you pushed through, and which became a global project and became very significant in terms of easing that work process. Why do I tell this story? Because in a culture, we will always come across the people who say it cannot be done. I think all of us have been through that barrier. We've banged our heads on that wall. But there will always be people who do believe. And this is where Carol Dweck's growth mindset really comes in. Because to effect cultural change, we need to find the champions within the organization. The leadership needs to find champions within the organization who can be the thought leaders and to be really the people to lead, to set the example, to lead the change. And I believe that cultures can change. It is a very painful process, but like Thomas said, it has to be top down. We need to find people who are champions. We need to give them a bit of leeway in terms of creativity and innovation, and obviously support, so that they can then be the ones to be the change agents in the organization. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ming. So yes, culture is definitely difficult to change if it's not enforced by the top leaders, the leadership level. So I'm coming to my last question, and this would be posed to Mr. Hon and possibly Mr. President, if you'd like to answer this question, okay? So the most successful companies compete with the best talent, but in a highly complex hiring market where the rules are evolving rapidly, what typical mistakes do you see HR leaders or leaders in general make when building a sustainable talent acquisition strategy for an omni-channel digital world?
I would say that the biggest mistake HR has made was very centric on the academic certification. So I have situation where we have seen very good talent. They are hackers. They are very passionate about cybersecurities. But because due to the fact that the certification is not as high, so and that's how the candidate were demanding certain higher salary, and our HR said no, your kind of academic qualification doesn't justify for that. Perhaps you come in and work for a while and then you look into it. So ended up we have challenged to actually hire those people who we know they are passionate, and but yet due to the academic certification, we were not able to bring them in. That's one of the common mistake that I've seen very often here. Other than that, of course, the experience also, a lot of people actually like to say, okay, I want to actually look into the with international company experience. But I do come across certain candidates because they work in smaller companies, so they have a holistic view of everything. Rather than in a big organization, they were actually quite clearly defined on the specific area of expertise. So ended up big organization candidate from big organization may not be able to actually see the holistic view sometimes because not their fault, but rather their working experience is such that they are clearly defined to not actually go across the border for elsewhere. But small organization, they have to do more things. So ended up they gain more knowledge on the entire perspective of the business. So that is what I actually often notice.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hon. And Mr. President, Mr. CS, would you like to have your thoughts about what can leaders do to overcome this challenge? Some mistakes that they commonly make when hiring talents from omni-channels. You're muted. We can't hear you. Hold on. All right.
Thank you. I
Okay.
now can talk.
Yes.
I can see the future recruiters or headhunters or HR managers tied to this word called blockchain. I see the future workers are all going to be, what they call that, to have data linked from birth to retirement. Everything they do, everything that they have done will probably be recorded and can't be erased. That is a future we see. And in terms of employment, unfortunately, as Han pointed out just now, when we hire people, we look at the past history, what they have done. So to gauge what they can do in the future is a challenge which I think in the future, again, autonomous intelligence may just do some predictive analytics of a person. So the future, again, probably depends on AI in terms of the workforce. So the mistakes made is all going to be what soon will be called what deep learning that will be incorporated in the huge program.
Thank you so much, Mr. CS. And I suppose that's the end of the panel session. And we would like to invite Mr. Oliver back to close the session. Mr. Oliver, are you around?
Miss Hanis, there is actually a questions in the chat box. So are we going to take that?
Yes, of course. There's one question from Roya. So, thank you, Dr. Sim, for an insightful presentation. So, her question was, with the concept of evolution and how fast it's growing, shall we expect changes and modification to our education system to help future generations scale up better?
Yep. So I think the answer is yes. We actually are experiencing some disruption at the moment, in particular in this pandemic time, where people are going learning online. And as I mentioned earlier in my presentations, that we are actually looking into something called micro-credentials. So which means that the students no longer they need to attend the entire 3 to 4 years programs to get their certificates. They can actually take up these individual modules, micro-credentials, and they can accumulate them and become a recognition for a degree rewards. So this is actually what's going to happen in the education industry. Of course, it will take some time for the education industry to digest, and also for the industry actually to accept such a way of recognition, because as Hon mentioned earlier on, HR, they are pretty much still looking into like this CGPA that you have achieved in your degree to determine whether you actually have the skills to be fitted for the jobs. But as also in my presentation, I have mentioned that our learning is actually, we call it just in case. We have covered a lot of things in the programs, but it's just about 20 to 30% can be applied to the jobs. So which means that in fact, you have wasted most of your times in other things that is just in case that you need it. So we are trying to change that way of learning, right, into, we call it just-in-time learning. And also we are incorporating of AI technologies into our learning process as well. So for example, in my universities, we're actually working with a company. We are getting tools from them so that they can automate the marking process. So which means the students, when they submit their programming works, this tool will automatically perform the marking. Okay, and also it will produce a reports to actually identify the weakness of the students in a particular programming areas. So that our roles as a lecturers is actually to facilitate, to actually identify the weakness or maybe the strength of the students. Okay, so we can spend more times in doing that thing rather than the very routine this marking and assessment works. I think that is also another change that we are experiencing in the education as well. Okay, so that's all I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sim, and thank you so much to everyone who have stayed till now. We have overrun by a good 15 to 20 minutes, but it was just so exciting, so insightful from everyone. All the speakers are really, really great with their content, and I'm sure all of us learn a lot. Just going back to my earlier video that shows the balls running in a straight line and eventually creating a synergistic effect of a rotational movement. That's what I believe we can hope to see with the digital workforce, by being able to work with another party, a companion, in this case possibly the digital companion together with the humans. We hope to see our productivity exponentially grow in a very different direction. I'm sure the decoupling or de-skilling or, well, de-technology that may come along the way will be a very interesting future for us. The current COVID-19 pandemic has made us pivot to a new normal, and I'm sure we're going to see more and more of this happening. So once again, I would like to thank our organizational partner, Maera, for teaming up with APARA in this webinar to deliver this session. Also to thank all our sponsors and all our partners in the process of organizing and supporting this event.